Our more digital folks put together a great presentation Monday for our internal teams to say, here's what you need to do to get your ducks in a row for our agencies and clients for Giving Tuesday. And we said, hey, why not take the same information and give it out as well? So that you are seeing the slides that our teams saw in terms of what folks are thinking about for Giving Tuesday and for year end. So not a surprise for a lot of folks on the digital side of things. Second half of the calendar year is the most lucrative time, and we can pretty well narrow that down to November and December. This year is the second year in a row that Giving Tuesday is in December, so we can almost say December give it. But Giving Tuesday also becoming more like the 12 days of Giving Tuesday, where you get a partridge in a pear tree 2 weeks out and get to all drummers drumming by the day of. And yes, I know for those among listening deeply that the 12 days of Christmas actually start, not end on Christmas, but hey, go with me here. So generally lucrative. We do anticipate local elections being a significant part of this, rising costs on the digital advertising side. We are seeing commercial entities go into this, trying to create Travel Tuesday and deals that extend, just like we're extending out what it means to be Giving Tuesday, they're extending out what Black Friday means. And so you'll a lot more email inbox clutter. And this is, in terms of economic indicators, it's not looking like a particularly good macroeconomic client or climate. Did see some data out just now from Bureau of Labor Statistics that people's average credit score has fallen to the lowest number since 2009. And 2009 was not a particularly good year to be in the credit score business, as we had the Great Recession then, knowing and tempering expectations for this year. What our more digital folks said to the organization is, it's time to apply the learnings that you had earlier in this year. You'd be forgiven if you said January through October is the digital dry run for what you're going to do at the end of the year. Having those leads in the bank, doing that lead gen, it's part of why we're talking about texting, and we'll talk more about texting. It's part of why we launched our email acquisition product earlier this year. It's all of it to build those leads for later on in the year, so that you have good lists going in. Making sure you're refreshing those audiences, refreshing your models, doing email hygiene to make sure that when you're advertising, you're getting the most out of that. Some creative tips that folks gave. None of this is going to be terribly earth-shattering for you, but a lot of Giving Tuesday is about that blocking and tackling. Having that urgency, whether it's a match or a timer or a match plus a timer, that urgency really does help with Giving Tuesday. We've found it in head-to-head tests all the way down. That idea of progress to goal and having a reason for that goal to exist is vitally important. And that animation, so that our attentions in this a squirrel economy can be captured by the ads that you're creating. Demonstrating that value, match multipliers are a big part of it. Having, you see an example here from American Cancer Society where you're saying exactly what can happen as a result. That symbolic giving can be especially helpful at a year-end and in Giving Tuesday. One of the studies, the Habitat for Humanity example here is a good one, but I have seen some studies that indicate it may be better to do symmetrical amounts rather than paint with brushes, paint with rollers, nails. You would do paint with brushes for a bedroom, paint with brushes for 5 rooms, 10 rooms, so that someone doesn't say, oh, I personally view paint rollers as more valuable than nails. So there's that opportunity to say, so that would be a symmetrical ask and perhaps a better way of structuring that same sort of idea, but giving someone value for the money, incredibly important. Creative, having those visuals that run across channels. I know we have more content super users here, so you probably saw our Giving Tuesday report or webinars or those sorts of things that have talked about how some of Plan International's best creative was a very simple blue box with text on it talking about support of girls worldwide. That carried through Giving Tuesday, that carried through year end. The other thing that Plan did that was effective was they sent out postcards. And so that reinforced that Giving Tuesday message. So that idea of donor surround sound really does go across all channels, and making sure they all look the same and have the same message validates that you're a legitimate organization, you're making a legitimate ask. Money's going to go where it needs to go. We are seeing almost half of email donations coming in via mobile. As we said on the webinar Monday, and it was Sal Salpietro from Fundraise Up, one of our partners, talked about how mobile isn't coming, it's here, and we need to be really focused on how you would cater toward that. End of year testing, we don't test as much end of year because hopefully you've done the tests that get you to where you need to go during prime time. But and if you do need to do testing there, it's more nibbling around the edges with an eye toward what does this mean for our revenue. You're not throwing the long ball for Giving Tuesday. So if you haven't done this testing, you don't know what your Giving Tuesday messaging is going to be, now's the time to get out some emails and this display ads and those sorts of things. Get it locked down in September and October so that you have it ready to go for November. More digital folks wanted to say, plan for what January looks like. Did you make your goal? What do you say if you make your goal? Share what was accomplished, accomplishment videos and those sorts of things. That sustainer conversion in January is always a great time. Fresh start messaging from our behavioral science folks is effective in making that transition. Those sorts of ideas going in help you as you're coming out. And then, not a surprise, you want to be looking at your KPIs across channels. So any questions on any of Giving Tuesday or end of year best practices? A few notes from the AI wars. As many of Google has been sued by Department of Justice, they had to pay a fine. They're opening up some of their data. Another part of that is that a lot of documents that wouldn't have been public are now public. And so one of the insights that we have is why Google's model AI overviews are a bit more spammy than traditional results. And what it is, in order to be able to surface that so quickly at the top of their results, they're going off of what they called fast search, which is about 1/100th of the data that's used to power Google's regular model. So it's a much smaller subset. And it is not tempered by the link structure. So Google, way back when Brin and Page put together the original Google search algorithm, the whole idea behind it was a link is like a citation or it's like a vote in favor of a web page. And so those with the most link traffic from the most trusted sites also then can be trusted. If this good site trusts this site, must be also good. I'm drastically oversimplifying. None of that is in Google AI overviews. They are not using link popularity as one of the measures. And so that means that there's a little bit more chaff in with the wheat there. And Google also came out with their August spam updates on what constitutes a spammer. And so much hay was made because the standards that Google uses are you need to have firsthand experience, you can't use extensive automation, you must have expertise in the system, and you can't just summarize what other people are doing. Otherwise, you're spam. And so Google AI overviews aren't using firsthand expertise, are fully automated, have no experience, and are summarizing what others have done. And so people are saying Google is violating its own standards, but they can. They're Google. Another item from the AI, many of you on the behavioral science side of things know about the foot in the door technique. This is like getting someone to sign a petition and then on the back end of that saying, oh, you signed this petition, would you also care for a donation? We had a great example of that. The webinar we did on Monday where a Valentine's Day text after a school asked someone to send Valentines to their kids. And only after that did they make the ask. And it was more successful than a lot of their traditional campaigns. So that's the foot in the door technique. It works with AI agents too. This is someone working with a virtual fundraiser in the metaverse. They had a standard message versus a foot in the door message, and willingness to donate is higher when someone has that foot in the door technique as well. So AI agents can use all of the like behavioral science, Cialdini messaging that you've seen in the metaverse as well. So hopefully interesting. CEO of Microsoft listed out his 5 AI prompts that he has every day. A couple of these I found helpful, so wanted to share. Give me 5 things that are likely top of mind for our next meeting and prep me for my next meeting based on my interactions and team discussions. And so this is a good way of hopefully 80% of that already, but to capture that 20% you might have forgotten can be really helpful. Project statuses and reality checks. Being a CEO, I would imagine he gets rosier pictures sometimes than I would get if I were asking for a project status. And so this reality check, look at the engineering process, look at the pilot program results, give me a probability that this project will actually happen when it say it's going to happen. Speaking as someone who has been talking about how the new More website is going to launch every month for the past 3, I completely understand this. By the way, More should have, by the time we talk in October, More should have its new website up. Knock wood, spit through teeth, throw salt over shoulder. So hopefully a more helpful experience for those of you coming to the More website. And then time audit, review my calendars and my emails, talk about the buckets of time that I'm using as a way of reality checking. Am I spending my time in the right amount? Now, he said these are his daily prompts. I am skeptical that every day he looks at his calendar, his email from the past month. That, for me, would come through on the time audit as a waste of time, but that's probably weekly or monthly looking back to say, hey, how am I spending my time? The games of free cell aren't helping me. Maybe I should do something else. There's a great book by Gretchen McCulloch called Because Internet that talks about how the internet has changed our language. And there's new research out from Florida State University that now AI models and AI speak that we've talked about in previous things are actually entering the lexicon. So words like delve or intricate or surpass, boast, meticulous, garner, words that hadn't been used a lot in spoken speech are coming through more and more as words that are favored by these AI models. Delve in particular isn't used much in American English. It's used more in British English. And OpenAI in particular did a lot of its reality checking in Nigeria, where people speak British English versus American English. And so a lot of things were changed to delve instead of look deeper into or those sorts of things. And so seeing increases in that language shows that we shape our realities and our realities shape us. Google's new DeepMind image generation model that's available with Gemini came out. It's called Nano Banana. That's not the official term, but it's one that was used by developers and has really caught on. And it is a fascinating image generation model. So they put out 10 prompts that got the results you'll see. I wanted to feature 3 of them because they are just stunning. So recreate this cat as a 16-bit video game character and put it into the game. I think I've played that game. Here's a picture of me as an adult on the left. Create a picture of me as an adult having a tea party with a younger version of myself using probably not the same de-aging technology as the Irishman, different AI de-aging technology to say, oh, you can now play with yourself in this mythical picture. And then just for fun, take this person's tennis dress and turn it into a dress made of tennis balls. And it's like the tennis balls even have the same ripple in the skirt. Pretty impressive model. If you want all of them, the Gemini Nano Banana examples are a fun watch, in my opinion. Pew Research just did a study on what happens when there's an A. So Google has been saying, no, AI overviews don't take away from people clicking on links and going to actual websites. Pew Research looked into this. If there isn't an AI summary on the top of Google's results, 15% of people clicked through to a search result. if it had an AI summary, 8% went through. So it's not like Google was sending us a bunch of traffic to begin with. 85% of searches, people ended their browsing section, looked at some other Google result, left to go to some other site. Only 15% click through, that's now down to 8. And so the little bit of traffic that was coming through from Google is poised to be halved as AI overviews are continuing through. Now, Google says that because of that, people go to websites with more intent. You may be getting better results, but that's really difficult to prove proposition. And so one of the things that we talk about is how do you get into AI overviews? How do you get into generative search listings in a way that compels someone to seek you out? And so that's what we're doing with a lot of clients and candidly with our own website, hopefully. And then Monday, a paper just came out about how people use ChatGPT. And the most interesting part of it, in my mind, was that the gender gap has not only closed, but slightly reversed. Women are now 53% of ChatGPT users. Take this with a grain of salt. They are going by first name and what the percentage likelihood. This is what I used to do to figure out file composition before there was good data appends on this. 15 years ago, I had US Census results of people's first name and whether they classified as male or female. At the time, those were the only two categories. And then I would estimate out. Turns out if you have the name Chris, K-R-I-S, you are literally 50% likely to be male, 50% female at the time. That was the most androgynous name potentially. Something like Nick, mostly male. Something like Nikki, much more likely to be female. So that's how they did the gender mix. So not scientifically accurate where it's been appended, but good enough to be able to say this used to be 80% male when ChatGPT first launched and is now gotten much closer to parity. Any questions on any of that? Then a couple of plugs for upcoming attractions. We have a Beyond Premiums webinar on October 8th. You can get to that on the We Are More webinars page that I hopefully will be able to find and put into the chat while we are talking here. But this is that idea of I have some people who love premiums, want to get them premiums, give me the label and the calendars and all of those sorts of things. And then you have the people who say, why are you wasting your money in that way? It's really nice to be able to know which people are which. And so we have modeling available that can do offer assignment. And I'm actually able to put the registration link in the chat. So Alzheimer's Association is going to share their results when they put that into practice on the mail side of things. I alluded to the webinar we did Monday. That's with our friends over at Fundraise Up and Tiltify, using the results from our 2024 year in review to talk about trends there. Greg's on the picture, but he was pulled away. So I was the dime store Greg Fox to be able to present for that. But the YouTube link, I put that into the chat if that's of interest to you. Hopefully some good nuggets there. And many of you probably saw that we launched our texting product a couple of weeks ago. So texting more and more often is feeding into that omni-channel mix. We're seeing it helping create that 1 + 1 = 3 surround sound where even if the text doesn't cause a text donation, it makes someone more likely to donate to the email and to the mail piece and to the CTV spot, those sorts of things. Don't necessarily have to do it through us, but definitely consider doing texting with whatever provider you would choose because it is a good part of that omni-channel mix. For those wondering, do you need an opted-in list already? You don't necessarily. We and others can do peer-to-peer texting. So if it's a person doing the text send, they can send to a non-opted-in list and try to build that opt-in list for you. Over the next month, you'll see more on offer assignment modeling from us. We'll be talking more about our donor ambassador program to help create high-value donor products, and we should be launching a data cleanliness scorecard that's free. So I don't feel too bad doing a sales plug for that, but you can come in and say, how many of your folks could you have email addresses for that you don't have email addresses for, things like that. So if that's of interest, shout it out and we will get you into that. And then into the potpourri section, interesting study out about how direct mail works in the age of marketing and digital marketing. The answer is pretty well. As now, this is from the for-profit side, but as people increase their mail volume, their orders went up 1% for 1%. Really strong results there. You like to see that type of marketing elasticity because it means you are still very much on point. And then now, bigger brands did better than smaller brands, and we all know this. If you're running DRTV spots, your mail does better because people know you're a legitimate organization, those sorts of things. And then they put in an actual customer acquisition campaign. Mail had the lowest customer acquisition cost, the highest average purchase price, and so the highest return on ad spend over Google, over Amazon, and over Facebook. So mail's still very effective in this environment. WordStream came out with its Facebook ad benchmarks, mostly from the for-profit side as well, but you're seeing for leads about a $2 cost per click, about a $27 cost per lead, pretty expensive to try to convert, but good for some. But that traffic objective, you're still able to get a 70% cost per click. What this says to me is Facebook can still be a really effective platform for testing messaging because you can put stuff in there and for 70 cents a click, run a test and see, does this subject line work better before you put it out on Giving Tuesday, for example. A paper came out called Emotional Variance and Trajectory in Donation-Based Crowdfunding, Starting with Negativity, Ending in Hope. A spoiler alert in the title there, what they found is if you get the best results when you start with a negative emotion and bring someone through to a positive emotion. So there's this big movement toward strength-based messaging. And yes, good, glad we're not having poverty porn anymore, those sorts of things. But we do still need to show need before we show how that need can be met. So having your full emotional journey most effective. We talked about a person in Australia who filed about half of all of Australia's noise complaints. Well, Dublin said, hold my pint of Guinness, because a person in Dublin made 90% of all noise complaints to the Dublin airport. One person, an average of 64 incidents reports a day. At that point, you just stay on hold the whole time, I would imagine. And then finally, the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office was dispatched to an ice cream shop in Lake Tahoe, only to see this bear behind the counter. They snapped a couple of shots before escorting it out, and no word on whether the bear wanted one scoop or two. Want to make sure that we are maximally helpful for you as we look out and retool for 2026, as we are all doing. So shoot me an email. I'm at nellinger@wearemore.com, and appreciate you joining today. Thank you. Have a good one.